Welcome to a Wolverine Chronicle exclusive segment, Behind Enemy Lines. This week we are looking at Week 1, Michigan versus East Carolina. We're still a couple months away, but I have a very special guest that wants to take a little deep dive with me into that Week 1 matchup. I've got Stephen Igoe, publisher of Hoist The Colors, which is, of course, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Stephen, what's up, dude?
Not much, man. I know it is closing in on July, almost to football season. To me, like when you get to July, you're kind of working through the dog days of summer. So I'm just ready for August to get here because then it'll fly by and then we'll be in the football season. Of course, that means East Carolina at Michigan. So excited to talk with you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, once we get within about 100 days of kickoff, I think that's when everybody starts feeling it, starts counting down the days. And so we're gonna look at this Week 1 matchup, and of course things are subject to change in the offseason between now and then. But it's never too early to start talking about Michigan football, or in your case, East Carolina football. So even though we are, on that day in September, we'll be mortal enemies. Right now, we can talk as friends and get to know each other's teams a little bit. I'm gonna jump right in. Sound good?
Let's do it, man.
All right. What position group do you expect to be the strength of this East Carolina team this year?
So I think defensively is where you have to start, just because they are honestly losing a lot on both sides of the ball in terms of proven production, especially on offense. But defensively, they were terrible in pass coverage last year, and really basically they're resetting their whole secondary. So that's maybe a blessing in disguise in some regard, which we can get into. But the entire defensive front returns, and they were really good against the run last year. That was by far the strength of the defense. Now, they are replacing a couple of linebackers, but they've got guys that have been in the program who have, Mike Houston did a good job recruiting and developing. They've got a lot of third and fourth year players who are going to step into roles this year who have been waiting their time. So although they are down starters at linebackers, they have a mix of those guys plus some transfers, which we can talk about. But the defensive front is the strength. They're pretty 2-3 deep at every position along the front. They like to go 3-4. They go 4-3. They mix and match based on kind of the personnel they're facing. They even do some 5-down stuff. They have basically a hybrid outside linebacker who they'll switch back and forth between stand-up and on the line of scrimmage, dropping back into coverage, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the strength of the defense, strength in numbers. They don't really have like a dominant standout guy, but they're just solid at every position. And then offensively, the running back room, despite the loss of Keaton Mitchell, who is now with the Baltimore Ravens, they're really deep. They added Georgia Southern transfer Gerald Green, who I think will be a second or third string back, but they returned Marlon Gunn Jr., who had a really solid freshman year. They have Rajay Harris, who's been in American Athletic Conference all-rookie team selection. He's coming off a knee injury. He'll be back. They've got a young guy, Javius Bond, who they like. They got UNC transfer Camaro Edmonds. They've got another guy they like as well. So they're 5 or 6 deep at running back. They feel good about. Again, it's just maybe not the star power there, but in terms of numbers, in terms of guys they can roll in and out, I think you feel really good about those two positions in particular.
Well, you mentioned that defensive front as the strength of the team, and they're going to have their work cut out for them because this offensive line and running back core at Michigan is perhaps the best that I've seen since I've been watching Michigan, which is about 35 years. Let's go ahead and look at the not so impressive part of the team. So what position group do you expect to potentially be a weakness?
I think for me, it's, I look at the secondary, and on paper, it's a weakness because none of the guys are proven, but just from being out there in workouts in the spring, like I think they've gotten better in terms of talent and length. They're much longer. They run better. They brought in, Ra Dilworth, who was a former 4-star transfer from UNC, who had a good spring. Siobhan Revels, a 6'2", 180-pound corner who runs a 4.4. He was a JUCO transfer, and he just didn't play a whole lot last year because he was kind of acclimating to the program. He also had some injuries. And so, those two guys, to me, are potential NFL players. They just haven't played a whole lot. So you just don't know what you're going to get, especially going into a season opener at Michigan. They also have some other transfers they brought in. At corner, they brought in 2 other transfers from North Carolina at safety and corner, respectively. A Louisville transfer at corner. At safety, they do return Julius Wood and Tegan Wilk, who have played a lot of football. But the secondary as a whole has a ton of moving parts. So, on paper, it's how's it all going to fit together? And then, of course, the linebacking transfers as well. So you got a lot of moving parts in the back half of the defense. That's a question mark for me. And then offensively, again, receiver, the passing game, they lost 2 1,000-yard receivers. New quarterback for the first time since 2018, the first part of 2018. So that's a major concern. I mean, they are very high on the upside of Mason Garcia, who's a former 4-star recruit, again, who has been in the program. This is his 4th year. He's kind of been groomed for this moment. But there were times in the spring where Alex Flynn, who's a 5th-year guy, looked better than him running the offense. So inexperience is the weakness, I would say, just because the guys haven't gone out and done it. They've been in the program, though. It's just instead of opening with an FCS team at home, you're opening at Michigan, and that's a concern for a new starting quarterback, really a new passing game and a new pass defense.
Yeah, traveling to the big house isn't exactly the easiest week 1 matchup, but I tell you what, it's going to be a hell of an experience for these guys that are filling new roles, and then it's all easy breezy from there. So
right, jumping into the fire, and then it gets it's all uphill from there, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, you kind of segued perfectly into my next question, which is, who do you expect to be the primary offensive impact player, that guy that the Michigan coaching staff is going to want to game plan against? And yeah, I will say, so I don't know much about East Carolina. I don't follow you guys very closely, but I did a little poking around before we hopped on today, and I noticed basically, all your playmakers from last year ended up in the NFL, right? Leading rusher, leading receiver. I think you even got a quarterback that's where is he, in Seattle or something? So yeah, so it seems like you guys are retooling. So who's going to be that guy this year on the offense?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, I think in an ideal world, so Mason Garcia, they've kind of groomed him to be the guy. And I'll tell you what, man, like physically, you cannot draw up a better quarterback prospect. He's 6'5", he's 240, he can run. He probably runs a 4.5, 4.6. I mean, he is fast. Now, and he's got a cannon for an arm. It's just the accuracy has been inconsistent at times, and then understanding defensive concepts, what defenses are trying to throw at him, can be an issue. And again, so that's just going to come with experience as he gets into the system. So if Mason Garcia can handle the starting job, he is a guy who you can build your offense around from the standpoint of he's a threat to keep it on every play because he's big and fast, and he can throw the football down the field. It's just, can he consistently make the plays to string together drives? I think he has the potential to make a bunch of big plays. So I think if you're Michigan, you have to keep that in mind. If they go with Flynn as the starting quarterback, he's more of a, hey, he's going to manage the offense, make the routine plays to move them down the field. So I lean towards Garcia being the guy ultimately, unless Flynn just completely outperforms him due to Garcia's upside. But I think it's going to start with the running game. I think they're really high on Marlon Gunn, who's originally from Louisiana, who is a big, powerful back. And then Rajay Harris, if he can get back to his healthy freshman year form, that's kind of a 1-2 punch you can really build your running game around. And then the passing game, Jalen Johnson he was really good last year. He was kind of the third option, dealt with a back injury, but now he's moved into the slot. And with C.J. Johnson, Isaiah Winstead onto the pros as 1,000-yard receivers, he's going to be a more focused guy of the offense. So those are kind of the names to watch out for. And then they brought in, a Colorado transfer, Chase Soule, Kansas transfer, Keelan Robinson. They returned tight end Shane Calhoun. It may have to be by committee early in the season till somebody steps up and kind of proves they're the go-to guy in a spot like the big house.
So it sounds like when you were talking about the quarterbacks that there is not a clear-cut starter. Is that right? That Garcia and Flynn, there might be a little competition heading into the fall?
That is how they're selling it, and I think it really did become a competition with how much of a jump Alex Flynn made in the spring. He's a guy who's a pre-med student. He's put off going to medical school as a 5th-year guy to return. He's already got his degree in hand and basically trying to win the starting position. So, you've got two guys who are very different, but again, who have been in the program, same offensive coordinator, same system. So, it's not like they don't know what they're doing. They just haven't played a whole lot because Holton Ahlers was a 4.5-year starter. But these guys have gotten a lot of 1 reps in practice. They've gone against the number 1 defense. They've gotten some game action. So it's just kind of a, hey, do we want to take this competition into the season till we determine a starter? Given how good Michigan is, I don't know if you want to mess around with, let's go with a 2-quarterback system until somebody who takes the job in that opener, I think they're going to want to go in with a starter, but it wouldn't shock me if both guys played. Again, I just think with Garcia, and if they're going to build this offense around the running game, I think if he can prove he can be the guy, I think he'll start. It's just how it goes from there is the big question.
Well, yeah, it sounds like there's some question marks on the offensive side of the ball, but question marks aren't always bad, right? That's where you get some surprises, some guys step in to fill some big shoes. But you mentioned earlier the strength on that defensive line, and so that leads to the next most obvious question, which is if you were going to pick one guy that's kind of the singular impact playmaker on the defensive side of the ball, are you going to stick with that front seven, or is there somebody in the secondary that's that standout guy?
So I think the guy who I look at and has the most potential, if he has the type of season he can have as far as an NFL guy, is Julius Wood. He's actually their returning field safety. He's 6'2", he's 195. He can run like crazy. Last year was his first year as a starter. He had a pick six against Memphis. He's kind of the guy who can make a game-changing play. And so he's great in the run game, can be very dynamic in the pass defense game. So he would be the guy that I circle in terms of, hey, if ECU is going to have a chance, he's going to have to make a big play defensively at some point in the game. I think you can rely on the defensive front to do their job and not, just get totally ransacked in that game. I know Michigan's got a premier rushing attack, dynamic rushers, et cetera, but it's not like ECU hasn't seen good running games before. This will just be at another level. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think they'll go in intimidated just because of their experience up front. But I think Jeremy Lewis on the edge is he's a 6'3", 235-pound outside linebacker. Former tight end, made the switch to defense a couple years ago. He's kind of their best pass rusher and kind of your premier guy off the edge. And then Elijah Morris, Deontay Johnson are their best interior guys. So more solid up front, I would say. And then Julius Wood, kind of the playmaking ability. He has all conference potential on the back end at safety.
Well, ECU managed to win some games last year. I think it was 500 or just above 500. Is that right?
Yeah, so they went 7-5 in the regular season and beat Coastal Carolina in the bowl game. So 8-5 overall.
8-5, yeah, winning record with a bowl win. And so to me, that's a team that should not be overlooked. Whether you're Michigan, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, it's like you don't want to overlook these guys because they're sending guys to the NFL. They're winning bowl games. I never want to assume that a team like Michigan is just going to handle a team like this. And so let's take a look. I want to give you a chance to maybe make a prediction or talk about where you expect ECU to finish in the American Conference. So where do you see these guys landing this year in the conference?
So it's interesting. If this was, you said earlier, is our question marks a bad or a good thing? And on paper, nobody's going to pick ECU to win the American because they don't have that proven production. If they had last year's team returning, they'd probably be picked to win the league. But just following the program and following recruiting, like Mike Houston, he's won everywhere he's been. This is year 5. He's had a chance to recruit and develop his kids. I mean, I wouldn't go and say ECU is going to win a championship. I wouldn't make that prediction, but it would not shock me if something like that happens because the culture's set. The guys know the standard. And honestly, there are guys that are taking over starting positions that are more talented than the players in front of them. They were recruited for that reason, and they sat and learned, the culture, et cetera. Kind of like Jim Harbaugh built at Michigan, set the foundation, then brought in higher caliber recruits. So how that transition is going to go, it could go one of two ways. It could be a mixed bag for sure. I would pick them in the upper middle pack of the American. I think teams, UTSA is coming in from Conference USA. They've finished top 25 the last 2 years with 2 Conference USA titles. Memphis, SMU has just made a killing in the transfer portal with NIL. Those type of teams, along with Tulane, which beat USC in the bowl game last year, the major bowl game, that's kind of looked at as the upper tier. And then to me, ECU's in that next tier of if the unknowns break the right way, they get Tulane at home, they get SMU at home on a Thursday night. I think things could get interesting, but that's kind of how I would handicap it. I think they're probably a bowl team unless they just can't figure out the quarterback situation. And then beyond that, it just kind of depends on what the rest of the league looks like.
Well, they take on Michigan week 1 at the Big House. So go ahead and finish this sentence for me. East Carolina wins if
Michigan plays a terrible game, A, overlooks ECU, B, and ECU has a new starting quarterback that ends up being a star. To me, that's the only way they go into the big house and win. Look, I mean, everybody wants to point to App State around here because they're in the same state, and they went into Michigan several years ago and won. But you look at the talent level Harbaugh has risen that program to, the expectations. Basically, it's, from the outside looking in, it looks like a national championship or bust type year, just given everybody coming back in Ann Arbor. And, I don't think they'll overlook ECU in the opener, but you never know. College students are going to be college students. How many of them have actually followed ECU or know all about ECU? Like in ECU's history back in the 90s, they used to go on the road and upset some powerhouses, but that was a while ago. They're just getting back to the program standard that they kind of set back then. And so, nothing would shock me this day and age of college football, but they're going to have to play out of their minds. They're going to have a lot of things go right. They'll have to get some lucky bounces. And I think Mason Garcia or Alex Flynn would have to, just have the performance of a lifetime and kind of establish himself as the next great ECU quarterback. And, time will ultimately tell which of those guys, if either of them end up being that.
Well, let's go ahead and flip it and turn the table here. Finish this sentence. Michigan wins if.
Michigan wins if, definitely wins going away if they establish the running game, which their offense is built around. And I think if ECU, their ultimate goal is going to be go in and not just get demoralized in the running game. Because if you're giving up 6-7 yards a pop, like Michigan is certainly capable of, you're not going to have a chance. So if Michigan establishes the run, it'll be over in the first quarter. And the only chance ECU has to keep it close, put some pressure on Michigan, is to stop the run. And hey, if you give up a big pass or two early, and that means you're stopping the run, maybe you live with that. You just can't get into a situation where they're lining up in pro style and getting 6, 7, 8 yards a chunk. And ECU's done a good job of stopping that in the past. It's just this is going to be a different beast. And overall, if Michigan just shows up and plays this game, the talent level is obvious. They got multiple first, second round, third round NFL picks. They got a shot to win a national championship for a reason. If they show up, get out to a big lead, it's going to be hard for ECU to keep pace. But hey, it's college sports. Anything can happen. And who knows on September 2nd.
Well, Stephen, I'm going to hit you with the next question, which is often like pulling teeth when you ask a guy this question. So I'm going to see if you'll give me an answer here or not. Right. Do you have a score prediction for the Michigan-East Carolina game?
Well, so the line is at what, 36, I think, around 36, which, again, I've talked about this with a lot of people. Like, at first it surprised me, but then I went and looked at Michigan's past openers with Jim Harbaugh, like the last handful of years, and they've just been crushing people. And I do think East Carolina is a higher caliber program than a lot of those teams. So, like, I lean towards it being high 20s, low 30s. Like, nothing would shock me. Like, I look at 45-10, 45-14, and that would be a cover for ECU. I mean, I don't think it would be a success for ECU necessarily, but at least if you lay the money, it would be a cover. So I'm going to go 45-14, Michigan wins.
All right, and I'm not going to hold that against you. We're in the middle of the offseason. We might replay that down the line, but I just respect you actually giving me some numbers there because and it was you're a realist too, right? Like
right.
I thought you might be predicting the upset of the century, but no, we live here on Earth, so.
Yeah, I mean, look, as much as I would love for my website to see the benefits of an East Carolina victory over Michigan, it's going to be a tall task. And again, with all the inexperience, like, it's just a lot to ask. Now, I mean, Mike Houston, he did take the Citadel into South Carolina and win at South Carolina with the Citadel. And he took James Madison into ECU when he was the James Madison coach and beat ECU 34-14. But at the same time, those programs, ECU and South Carolina, were very down at those times. Michigan is going to be far from down. So it's going to be a tall task, and it's going to take a special effort just for ECU to have a chance on September 2nd.
I can't imagine that recruiting guys to Citadel is very easy. So that's impressive. No. I didn't know that. That's a very impressive line right there.
Yeah, he's done a heck of a job, man. I mean, he's he's a proven winner, and it's taken him time to build at ECU just because the program was in such bad shape. But he'll have the guys motivated, and he's going to. I think he said he's going to take them to the big house the night before the game, just to like have them soak in the stadium, the atmosphere, which they usually don't do. Usually just go the night before, stay at the hotel, and then go to the game. He's actually going to take them to the venue, say, "Hey guys, this is where we're playing." I'm sure he'll give a nice pump up speech, and they'll roll out the next day, 12 noon. I was hoping for a night game in Ann Arbor, but hey, we'll take the noon kickoff on Peacock. What are we doing, Peacock? Come on.
Yeah, that's right. This is the first time since I can really remember that we have a streamed, like, not major network game to kick off the season. But I'm gonna pay my $4.99 to get the Peacock subscription so I can watch the game. I don't know. I travel to some of these too. Maybe I'll make it up there, but. I tell you what, man, you mentioned your website. I want to make sure that my listeners and my fans and followers know, because we have a lot of diehard Michigan fans that really like to get into matchups, and hopefully I can send some people your way. So where can people find you, and how can they follow you?
So part of the 24/7 Sports Network, as you mentioned, it's the East Carolina site. Hoist the Colors is the name of the website. So if you just want to Google Hoist the Colors ECU, or just type in hoistthecolors.net, it'll take you straight to the website. And of course, the guys over at the Michigan 24/7 site do a great job. I know there's several publications like yourself that do a phenomenal job covering the Wolverines, but definitely check us out. And we'll have, we've done a little bit of a Michigan preview on the site already. You can follow us at HTC247 on Hoist the Colors, or myself at Stephen Stephen Igoe Igoe on Twitter for information there. And yeah, come August, you'll have if anybody cares about the ECU quarterback battle or any of that stuff, we'll have more clarity on that leading into that September 2nd opener. But I'm planning to make the trip to cover the game, so looking forward to it.
Heck yeah, man. And I will definitely be going to your site, and your site exclusively, for all my East Carolina news and notes. Stephen, you are a gentleman and a scholar. You may find me talking some trash when week one nears. Just know that it's not personal. It's all fun and games. I'll be jarring at you a little bit. Thank you for taking the time. For Stephen Igoe, I am Michael Smeltzer, signing off. As always, go Blue.